We can talk about that later. That's fine. That's fine. Okay, we'll talk about that later. It's fine. I'm on stage now. It's fine. Well, in a world where software dominates, how do you change your approach to product design? Because typically you don't necessarily think about product design needing to change. But it's different, product design, than actual product development. And so to have an effective approach, you need customer empathy, and you also need the desire to understand the why behind the customer problem. To speak to the design principles that can actually change the way that your company approaches product design, please welcome to the stage one of my fun speakers. We have a little bit of banter wherever we can, but please welcome to the stage Chief Design Officer at Comcast Business, John Guillaume.
Hey, everybody. You're racking up my time now. Oh, I need that. Yeah, critical. Good morning, and thank you, Naomi, for the introduction. That was nice. And thank you all for coming here to listen. So I got a confession to make, though, right up front. I'm not a designer, at least in a classic sense. Do we have any designers out there? Yeah, we've got 4 or 5. Well, one of the things that I want to share with you all in a journey that we're having at Comcast Business is how design can actually transform the way you do business. And one of the arguments I would make is design actually is not about a function or a role. It's about how a business can operate. And in that sense, we're all designers. So let me walk you through. I always like to start with everything with why. Why design? There's all kinds of things we were talking about. You just had a panel of experts up here talking about different ways to grow your business and so forth. But why does design even matter? Because to a lot of us, you think, this is kind of neat, it's fluffy stuff. But it's actually a lot more than that when you take it into context about having it the way you operate your business. So let's jump in. The first thing I would like to say is to jump into everything is changing. And I literally mean everything is changing. So a number of us have probably been around in the technology space. I've been in technology and telecommunications now for about 25 years. And it really doesn't matter which industry you are in, have been in, but everything is changing right in front of our eyes. And it's not just tech. It's not just the way we operate or the way we think about going to market. It's not some of those things, but everything. And it starts with who we are as consumers. And this is one of those things that really influences this notion of how we think about our work experiences, because they're being influenced by some of these solutions that we use every day now. So the bar isn't necessarily about, we suck a little bit less than the next guy in the B2B space, or we're a little bit better, or we have extra features. These are influencing expectations of work. The bar is rising because of consumer experiences. I remember the first time, how many of you remember the first time you grabbed an Uber? It was kind of like, you download the app, somebody probably told you, hey, it's pretty cool, right? And you have that first moment of, here comes the black car, it shows up. I remember I was in San Francisco, and I was a little skeptical, but it showed up, and you're like, wow, that was kind of magical, kind of cool. 15 million rides a day later, right? It's something that we just expect. You don't have that aha moment now. In fact, you're probably a little frustrated that they say it's going to take 4 minutes to get to you, and it actually takes 8. You know, everybody notice that? That's like some flaw with their algorithm. But now it can be a frustrating experience because of that, but you're so used to that. But at one point, not too long ago, it was a magical experience. Or how about the first time you shared pictures beyond your email distribution? Right? We do that every day with Facebook and Instagram. How about that first time you ordered something from Amazon at 8 a.m. and it was delivered 4 p.m. in the afternoon. And you think to yourself, how did that actually happen, right? And that was a very memorable moment. It's like, wow, okay, so my expectations are changing. Do we have any Xfinity customers at home? There we go, we got a handful, right? Gentlemen, please raise your hands. We got a couple colleagues at Comcast here. Come on, raise the hand, jeez. Reluctantly, come on. Anyway, that you use the voice remote. I saw some hands over here, right? The voice remote. You don't have to, you just say what you want to listen to or watch or listen. And it's not just on Xfinity's channel lineup, it's across Netflix, across other platforms as well. And you no longer have to remember television channels. And I tell you, you know it works for sure when the in-laws can come over and you don't have to tell them anything. And Tom, my father-in-law, says Fox News. And boom, he's set for the day. So it was, that's a magical moment that we can all appreciate. But it's these expectations that, these are magical moments that we don't as often get in the workplace environment. We don't as often get in a B2B. But wouldn't it be great to bring these things into the B2B experience? Absolutely. So along about 2012, there was this notion of the consumerization of IT. And so it's something that I'm sure many of you talked about. And in part, it's drawn from the fact that these applications that we can get on demand and these new tools, these new productivity tools or whatever they might be, are the preferred choices as opposed to these things that your workplace gives you, right? And I remember early, when I started my professional career, I was in sales. I did not have a laptop. And I had this, I don't know, trifold flip chart thing that I was supposed to use to sell. I'm dating myself a little bit. But it was inadequate in my mind, and I felt like I had a better solution. And that solution was, hey, I can create my own PowerPoints. And I went out and bought myself a laptop, and it wasn't company provided, and I brought it into work, and the IT guy says, well, we don't support that. And I said, okay. And that was it. And it was just, I didn't need support. This is my solution. Why did I do that? Because it solved a problem I had, and the business wasn't willing to support that problem or solve that problem for me. But there's a number of examples. I was talking to a gentleman in a Fortune 500 company, manages 300 salespeople, and I said, how do you communicate to 300 salespeople? And he said, Facebook Messenger. I'm like, what? And they had Skype deployed, right? Facebook Messenger. So they sought out a solution, a consumer-based solution that solved their communications problem, whatever that might be, right? That the business wasn't providing for them. So this is the idea that we have access on demand to so many really cool capabilities, and yet they are often lacking at work. So we bring these things into work. This has led to another phenomena, what I would call enterprise on demand. And many of us here have been involved in large procurement deals. I heard the gentleman on the stage earlier talking about, oh, it can take 18 months to do a deal. You know, by the time you gin up a business relationship, you got to talk to the legal team and the marketing team, you got a business case, you get the lawyers involved, and then you got procurement, and they take their ounce of flesh, and 18 months later, you got a deal. Well, at the rate of change today, that deal's old, right? But that does not foot at all with what we've come to expect as consumers. What? I want this app. I want it now, not 18 months later. I don't want to deal with procurement. I don't even know who runs procurement, right? I want it now. How do I get to now? Because that is our expectation. And this is something that we got to really take seriously as we design our products and solutions and services to bring them to our customer bases. Enterprise on demand. There's some really good examples out there. Slack, Zoom, Envision, for your few design types out there. DocuSign. There's some really good examples of what I would describe as inside-out distribution, where it may start with me thinking, hey, Slack is kind of a cool communications tool. well, let me pluck down my credit card, buy 5 licenses, and I got my team running on Slack. And then some other people say, yeah, well, I would like some of that. That's kind of cool, right? So they expand. And I think this notion of land and expand maybe has been popularized by Zoom, or somebody's quoted or said that. But this idea that you work inside out of a large organization is a way to actually drive distribution in a way that had never been done inside of large organizations. And this is 100% born from this notion of our consumer experiences are driving this. I don't want to wait 18 months. I don't want to wait 12 months. I don't want to wait a month. I don't want to wait a week. I want it now. And that changes perception. And if you have a choice, let's say you had one better solution over here and a pretty good solution here, but I can get it right now versus I have to wait 12 weeks. You may just choose to do that better solution now because it can impact the way your productivity immediately. So that's a consideration for sure. But it doesn't end there. Technology is changing. And I find this really interesting. If you look at that spike from 2017 to 2018, like a 40% increase in US venture funding, almost $140 billion. That's a big number, $140 billion. So capital is available to do all kinds of things. But here's another interesting thing. Software is 20 times less expensive to produce than it was 10 years ago. So imagine when we say exponential change, this is why. You got capital, and you can do things faster and faster than ever before, right? So technology is changing. As Mark Andreessen famously said, software is eating the world. And he's pretty spot on that, right? Big part of the conversation here at the conference. I was reading this article recently by, it was about Satya Nadella of Microsoft was being interviewed. And he had this interesting quote. He said, 500 million applications will be developed in the next 10 years. I don't know, you probably had the same reaction. I was like, as I read on, I was like, what, 500 million applications? How is that even possible? And his point was, every company is going to become a software company. Whether you're a grocer, you're in healthcare, you're in finance, it doesn't matter, you are a software company. And you will start producing your own applications, even as micro as they might be, you'll start producing your own applications. And of course, this is powered by the cloud and all the things that we're talking about here. But that's why every company is going to be a software company. And this, you have to compete in this day and age. If you're going to be technology focused, that's the way to compete for sure. So we've heard of the democratization of information. We may have talked about it. I love the whole thing about the internet, and you can access information at any time. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing. But I often talk about the democratization of technology. And sometimes I get a funny look, and well, what do you mean by that? Well, we have access to essentially anyone has access to any technology. And sometimes it's a credit card away, right? I think cloud compute is a really good example of that. It's a credit card away. And it wasn't very long ago where you probably needed $100,000, $500,000, $1 million, maybe $10 million to do that. Credit card away. Everything is available right now to anyone. So it's information, technology, channels, how to get trained. I mean, outside of being a brain surgeon, you can pretty much teach yourself anything now. Teams can teach themselves anything. Information is super readily accessible. So it's the democratization of everything. And that puts especially a tough burden on organizations to figure out, well, if everybody has access to everything, what do I have? What's different? What's unique? It's kind of a tough question to answer. People, come to mind. You want good people, good culture, and so forth. But here's the thing. All of these things that I'm talking about also change the competitive set. In the telecommunications space, Comcast Business, we have historically competed with the ILECs, AT&T and Verizon and CenturyLink. But if you look at a new technology, software-defined networking, SD-WAN, there's variants of it. 10 years ago, if you were talking about wide area networking, you were talking about 3, 5, 10, 12 competitors. We've counted 65 competitors in software-defined wide area networking already, and it's relatively new, 65. There's countless examples in the voice over IP or UCaaS space, video, security. The competitive set is changing because of all of these factors. They're being influenced, these new competitors are being infused with money, software is easier to develop, we all have access to channels, we've got platforms like AppDirect to distribute anywhere, anytime, right? So it does beg the question, so what's different? I love this quote. I was reading this article in TechCrunch by Gordon Ritter from Emergence Capital Partners was quoted here, but disruption happening broadly across Fortune 500 companies whose average lifespan is 20 years, and it wasn't too long ago, it was 60 years. It's a pretty dramatic impact, right? And I think as Andy Grove famously said, only the paranoid survive. We should be paranoid. I think everybody should constantly be paranoid because of all the things that I just mentioned. So Comcast business is changing too. If you're not familiar with who we are, we've got a really wonderful business. I've been fortunate to be part of the organization since 2010. When I joined, we were doing about $800 million in revenue, and it was kind of this nice side project within Comcast. And we're tracking towards $8 billion now. That's organic. Fastest growing telecom in the U.S., North America, I don't know, maybe the world, I don't know. It's been a phenomenal ride. We do about 40,000 transactions every month. We've got a large sales force. We've got a number of folks that out and support installations and technicians and so forth. We've got a really great business. We serve anywhere from SMB to enterprise, from data to voice to UCaaS to video to Wi-Fi security. It's pretty robust. And we've got what I would describe as a sunny day situation. Our business is good, and I hope all of your businesses are good. One of my favorite quotes, though, John F. Kennedy. He said, the best time to fix the roof is on a sunny day. And it's a sunny day situation. What becomes your differentiator? And can you fix it now while things are good? Because nothing's worse than when your whole goal in life is to make sure you don't churn to the next competitor. That's not fun. That's just not a fun place to be. And I think we are here because we want to change the paradigm and we want to gain more market share, right? We want to do things a little bit differently. So, what is the X factor? One of my arguments would be human-centered product design. So why? How does it work? Well, the why is, look, if you just stared at everything that we just did or just went through, what's different? What are you doing differently? Because everybody has access to the same thing. And granted, Comcast Business has some unique assets that not everybody can replicate. It's really hard to build a giant gigabit network across the country. That takes time and money. And some of you may have IP, some of you may have other core assets, but a lot of times it's really kind of software service driven. So design can make a difference, and it can be one of your X factors. So I'm gonna show you a short video by a gentleman named Don Norman, who he's kind of like the Yoda of human-centered design. And I tell you, I think in this 2-minute video, he captures the essence of it so well that you just want to become a believer, far better than I could. But he's also, by the way, great book, an author of The Design of Everyday Things, and really fascinating book if you're interested in design at all. So let me play this video.
The principles of human-centered design apply even if you don't follow the process of human-centered design. Because what are the principles? Well, the first one is be human-centered. Focus upon the people that whatever you're doing is intended for, whether you're doing a service or a product or an organizational structure or a new way of, I don't know, stocking the warehouse or putting things on shelves. Whatever you're doing, always think of the people, and all the people, not just the people, say, who are going to retrieve the items you put in, but the people who have to put the items up there in the first place. And if you're in the healthcare system, you have to think about patients and their families and the physicians and the nurses and also the medical personnel and the technicians, and for that matter, even the people who do the scheduling and clean the place. You have to think of it as a system and look at all of the components. That's the second important thing. Find the right problem. Almost always when somebody gives me a problem to solve, I refuse to solve it because it's not the right problem. It's the symptom of the problem. And I want to solve the fundamental basic problem, because if I can solve the basic problem, guess what? The symptoms disappear. But that's not always so easy, and it can take a lot of time. And even though I argue strongly you should always try to solve the fundamental root problem, sometimes it's okay just to solve the symptoms. And finally, you have to think of everything as a system. Everything is interconnected. So if you solve this tiny little piece, well, that's kind of nice, but sometimes optimizing each of the small pieces gives an inferior result. Optimization of the local does not mean global optimization. And so we should always be thinking of the big picture. What is the final result we care about?
You kind of just want to give him a hug, don't you? I mean, he's so believable, and but he's really spot on. And if I could just add a little bit color to this, human-centered product design is all of those things. And I would say the most important thing that we can do is organizations trying to create unique solutions is to focus on the problem by developing a deep empathy for your users and your customers. And by the way, when I say customers, I do say I don't mean literally your customers. I mean it just generally as a prospect or somebody who fits your target segment. But developing deep empathy with your customers is super important, because it's the only way you'll understand if you're actually solving a problem for them. In many of our businesses, a product manager who usually tries to solve these problems, right? They haven't done actually what they're building. So when we talk about wide area networking as an example, or maybe you're making a scalpel or whatever it is, right? It doesn't matter. Was that person a surgeon? Maybe in some cases. Did that person who is managing wide area networking actually manage a 1,000-site network? Probably not. So how can that product manager actually empathize with the people who are doing that? So you got to empathize with them. And frankly, that is just getting really close to them and having candid conversations and listening. Listen, listen, listen. Discover problems. When you listen, you're going to hear friction points. You're going to hear things that, oh, well, I solved that problem by I go over here and I do this, and then I swivel over here and I do that. Often customers come up with their own solutions. We do it every day without even thinking about it. Right? There's problems we have that we don't think of them as problems, but what happens is I swivel from one device to the other and then to the next device to accomplish one task without thinking about, well, why isn't that just like one thing? But we don't think about it because we are cobbling together solutions every day. The other thing I would say is don't vet solutions. All of us have ideas. And I would bet you like your idea. Fair? And don't vet your ideas, though. When you go out and you have these conversations, the worst thing you can do is say, I tell you what, I'm going to look at my new presentation page skipper, pointer, whatever it is, right? And my presentation remote has a button for forward, back, it has a laser, it's wireless. This thing is brilliant. It sells for $199.95. What do you think? And somebody says, yeah, it looks pretty cool, John. Yeah, I might buy one. You've almost learned nothing in that transaction. And that's how most of us go about, we vet our solutions. We kind of lead the witness to the answer we really want to hear because we've got this ego thing that we want to satisfy because we want to be right. It's human nature. We all want to be right. But don't vet your solutions. Really open up and give the opportunity for the customer to talk. Now, on that particular example, I was talking to Ari back here, who's actually running the show and showing me all this. And she says, oh, you know what, John? When you go back, don't hit the back button. And, just tell the folks in the back to switch your slide. And I said, why? And she said, well, because it doesn't work. There's this delay and da-da-da. I just did some pretty good product discovery, right? I didn't say, here it is. I just learned there's a problem. I've seen this particular remote on many stages. There's a problem there, right? That's a problem to be solved. But it's more than just saying, hey, got this new remote, it's cheaper, and it does these things, and it has a cool laser, and whatever. No, you got to discover the problems. That's the essence of it. And it's not just about the feature. So the back button, forward button, laser, it's more than that. It's the entire journey. Because all of us, from the folks that are actually implementing it, like Ari and the team back there and the team in the back of the session here, right? They are dependent on this thing working. So it's not just about me as a user pushing buttons back and forth. We've got 25 people dependent on this thing working, right? There's a journey here. And as Don eloquently said, it's a series of interconnected things, not necessarily just the micro. Humility. You have to go into, if you're really going to become design-driven, there's a sense of humility. Be prepared to be wrong, and it's okay. Celebrate those successes. When you're wrong, and I'll explain why wrong is a really good thing, and you hear, fail fast and all those kinds of things. And in context, there's a ton of sense why fail fast makes sense, and I'll explain that in a moment. But that's really important. So here's the product design framework. Now, one of the things you probably, well, maybe you're surprised, maybe you're not. I have not talked about hiring a 12-pack of these creative types that sit over in a corner with whiteboards and sticky notes, and they eat animal crackers and things like that, and none of that, which classically you think of, that's design. That's what those people do. That's what those people do. And as I said in the beginning, remember, think about it as a way to operate, not a thing. And it's truly, if you take it in that context, I think you can actually transform the way you think about bringing business or products and services to work. Ultimately, the goal of anything all of us are doing is to create a preferred situation over the alternative. It's as simple as that. That's why we build stuff. You have a competitor. Mine is better than yours. That's the goal. Pretty simple, right? So how do you go about that? Well, this is a very simplified view, but I think it gets to the heart of it. Discovery phase. Design thinking is a big part of the framework that we use, and hopefully something to use. There's definitely other systems and so forth, but it actually doesn't matter which system. It's more about, do you embrace it culturally? What problems can we solve? And you do that by developing deep empathy with your customers. That's the first. If you don't know what problem you're going to solve, why are you even building anything? Could be a waste of time. Once you understand what that problem is you're solving, have the team be maniacal on focusing on that problem. Maybe there's a couple problems, but maniacal about it. And don't let what about this feature? And so-and-so salesperson said we could do this, and the customer's demanding that, and you start drifting off, and it gets wider and wider, and you get this kind of feature farm thing going. What is BMVP? I kind of made this one up, but bare minimum viable product, because MVP means nothing. MVP is just how many features you can cram into a release. That's what MVP has actually become. And that's really not the intent. So frame it as bare minimum viable product, but it's really about the minimum thing required to solve a problem, to solve that problem. What is the minimum thing required to solve that problem? That's a great place to start. And then from there, you can figure out the UX. You know, what's the framework you're going to work in? Is it mobile? Is there a portal? Or is it a process thing? What is it? And then you can test it, right? So you go through these testing periods and prototyping and so forth, and you really start validating. You're building a body of evidence to suggest this is a good idea. And then ultimately you deliver. All right, so the code is maturing. You've gone through BRT and so forth. Great time to have a proof of concept, make sure it's actually the marketing promise is being satisfied. And when I say the marketing promise, I mean, hey, how many times do you read some marketing headline and it says, oh, this thing slices breads and shoots sparks and pours coffee and it's fantastic. Yet it's like hyperbole. It just doesn't really do that. And try to be intellectually honest. Is it really satisfying that promise that you set out to give to the customer? Is it really, really satisfying that promise? Then also a great time to figure out if it scales. So instead of 5 customers, maybe it's 100, maybe it's 1,000, depending on the scope of the project and the market and the type. But you have to learn these things as you go. Like this entire framework, this design all the way through end to end, then ultimately drive. And I just came up with these 4 Ds, by the way. It's kind of worked out pretty nice. I did ask the team, I need a D for that last one. I asked them about a week ago. Drive, that's what we came up with. But questions to ask. And these are questions that we ask internally at Comcast. Do our sellers get it? How many times have you launched a product? Anybody launch a product that your sales force just like, you ask them to repeat what you think they should repeat, and it's just like, oh my God, what am I doing? You want to beat your head on your keyboard. Anybody have that experience? Come on. Well, if none of you have, you got to tell me what to do, because I would love to learn from you. But that is something that's if you have a sales team, it's not just digital. They're your front line. They've got to be able to be excited about it. Do they get it? And do your customers adopt it? All these things are measurable, right? And if your sales folks aren't excited about it and your customers aren't adopting it, there may be a glitch in the system here. And hopefully, by going through this framework, the body of evidence that you're building to suggest this is a good idea, the answers to those questions become easier and easier. All right, so some of you, any finance folks out here? Business, MBA types? Come on. There's a few of you, okay. Let me reframe this and say, hey, John, this is kind of fluffy stuff. Product design, this is motherhood and apple pie. We do this all the time. And I'd argue you probably really don't. But this is an opportunity. I'm going to reframe this because product design is actually really smart business. It de-risks your business. Think of it this way. You have an idea. And over time, you apply resources to that idea. And the development process starts with an idea. You kind of run it through. And ultimately, you launch. But what if that idea was a bad one? You have potentially millions of man-hours invested into that launch. If you're a large company, millions is not unreasonable. When you think about all organizations involved, it's not unreasonable at all. Even hundreds of thousands. But we all say, oh, I could use more people. I could use more engineers. I could use more money if I just had that. Well, instead of asking for more, why don't we be more efficient with what we have and make sure the idea that you're working on is actually a good idea? And that starts with a framework of understanding, going through the discovery process. Is that idea a good one? Prototype it, test it, iterate on it, make sure it's right. That's the magic. That's where the magic can happen. I always say, if you're any product managers, there's a bunch out there, right? Product managers. Look, I've been building products for 25 years. You think you're right, but you're not. And this is where your humility comes in. You're 50% right. And that's not a shot. That's not a shot at you. You're 50% right. That's an average product. That's an average product. You might do fine. You might do fine. But if you can go through this discovery phase and you can get it 75% right, I'll argue for a moment there's no such thing as 100%, but if you can get it 75%, that extra 25%, that's the magic. That's the differentiation. That's the thing that feels like, I'm having lunch with my colleague and I say, hey, I got this cool thing from Comcast Business, I did this, and that's magic. And it's worth that effort to make sure that idea gets beyond just an average product. So Comcast, we have a set of design principles. I won't go through them because our principles may be different than yours, but they're important as foundational. But what I can't emphasize enough is foundational to this is what problems are we solving for our customers? By the way, how was that for a kind of a cheesy animation? It was pretty fantastic, wasn't it? It was like, oh, yeah, I'll try that one. That was pretty cool. But that is the pixie dust animation thing. That's where the magic happens. That's the magic. And it sounds like, here's another question. We always ask, what value does the customer get? We all ask that question. That's an easier one to answer because you can be fluffier. Oh, they like it all on one bill, and, we're pricing it right, and we're disrupting, and we're doing no, there's no value there. What problem are you solving? It's a really hard question to ask. Ask yourself, if you're a product team or you're an engineer, go back to your team. What problem are you solving? And you're going to probably get a mouthful of blah, blah, blah. It's really hard to answer if you haven't done your homework. It's really hard to answer. It's a good fundamental question. All right, so this is an excerpt from a book I like a lot. If there is no friction, there is no progress to be made, there is no innovation. This is from Competing Against Luck by Clayton Christensen. And a good book. I would recommend you read it. It'll give yet another lens into this notion of, it's not necessarily about product design in a classic sense or design in a classic sense, but it is a lot to do with the framework we're talking about here. So, as I said, this is about humans, and this is about human-centered design. So let's talk to some customers. And here you'll see some snippets of what we experience at Comcast in talking to customers and trying to understand what they go through on a daily basis, what they like about our services, what they dislike about our services, and this is where some of the magic starts happening.
So I'm just getting into work. It's really early, but the first thing I like to do is look at my phone and check to see if I have any messages. And I call in, and then I have my notepad right here that I write all my messages down on so I can return their calls during business hours. This is something that I do every morning and throughout the day.
Understanding what people do, right? There's a user of a service. She's not a decision maker of the service, but she's a user, right? So that's a unique persona. What she has to go through every day.
What do they mean by packet loss? Which tunnel? What is this? And lowest? This is not very exploratory to me.
Mm-hmm. No, that's really good to know.
No, it's number of active tunnels is 630. That's fine. I understand that.
Mm-hmm.
But packet loss over all tunnels, or what is this? What?
We've managed to really confuse that gentleman, right? But notice doing the interview, it wasn't about, well, just click on that and go there, and this is how it works, and that's what it is. And what would that gentleman do if we did that? He would say, oh, okay. And you would have learned nothing, right? Don't vet the solution. Open up and listen. Here's a gentleman who liked, this is a mobile application that we released.
What I like about this is all very simple, very user-friendly. This is almost like an app on the phone that a manager could easily keep check on and see what's happening, especially someone like me who is an IT manager. This is a
IT manager, we picked up on that. Someone who, that's a different persona, right? He's managing a network for a business, not a user, but a manager. So you pick up on different personas and what they don't like.
Yeah, the one thing I will say that I don't like when I have like my Be Anywhere on my phone is that when somebody's calling my line, it just has their number. It doesn't have their extension. And that drives me crazy because I don't know if it's a personal call coming in or actually somebody.
That drives me crazy. Look, lipstick only goes so far, right? You have to design services that go beyond just making things look pretty. Pretty is the bar. That's just the expectation. Yeah, they should look good, right? I don't know. Amazon doesn't really look good, but it's super functional. It's not always the rule. But definitely go over function and value and problem solving over pretty. Pretty's just do it if you can, but like it has to solve a customer problem. It's the most important thing. You can't take a crappy solution and make it great. You just can't. But it makes, some people can demo crappy solutions real well, and we've all seen this, right? I always say, if you're an expert in how to demo a crappy solution, you can make it look brilliant, right? Just like, click here, do this, the next thing you have 40 clicks later, and it took all about 10 seconds because they've done it 4,000 times, right? It looks brilliant, and you're like, yeah, I could use some of that. But yeah, it's when you put somebody in front of a solution, ask them to try it themselves, you get a completely different look. All right, how to become a design-driven organization. If I could give you one piece of advice, is start small. I started this notion 2.5 years ago at Comcast, and it was just an idea. And I started small, and it was something where, okay, we're gonna work on a small little project that no one's gonna care about. I'm not going to get funding. I don't need people. I don't need more money. I don't need approvals. I can just do it. Start small. Because plunking down to 25-page PowerPoints and being sanctimonious and saying, hey, we're design-driven now. Do it this way. I promise it won't work. It just doesn't work. Start small. Add evangelism to your title because it's an everyday thing, right? You start and it kind of never ends. It's something that takes time to transform. Any digital, I heard you talking about digital transformation. It's just not, hey, we're going to put some things up on the AppDirect platform and we're digitally transformed. No. There's a whole journey that goes along with it. So you got to add evangelism to your title. It never ends. Realize it's a cultural shift. It takes 3 years, depending on the size of your organization. It's a cultural shift. But when you start small, you start getting people bought in. It's like, yeah, I want some of that. That's pretty cool, right? Now, I could talk all day about what this journey actually looks like, and this certainly isn't a complete list. Hiring the right people is an example. But one of the things I always share with my team, and Chris have heard this before, is you're a startup within Comcast is a Fortune 50 company. But the team we're dealing, I just got 0, by the way. Hope I'm not going to get yanked. The team we're dealing with, right? It's like, we're a startup. Nobody cares about what you're doing right now. No one cares. How do we give reason to care? Well, you have to build a body of evidence to say, this actually makes sense. And you do it, you got to be scrappy. You got to work. You got to roll up the sleeves. You got to do work yourselves. It's just the way it is. There's no getting around work. And when you do that, that startup suddenly says, oh, look, I can go now to my CFO and say, look what we've done. There's no different raising cap venture. Hey, look what I've done. I've got traction. Oh, okay, here's some money. That's how it happens. That's how it happens. So we have this design journey that I think is pretty interesting, and be curious to see where you think you are on the scale. The dark ages, this is the feature factory. You're just cranking out stuff and not really talking to customers. And you think you're talking to customers and you hear tidbits from the sales team. It's like, we need that. And, customer won't buy if they don't have that feature and so forth. What happened to my journey. This may be me getting cut off. I don't know. Oh, I'm supposed to click again. Oh, it's going backwards. Can we go forwards? But this design journey starts, if you're in the dark ages of this notice on focus on features, and then all the way through as you get more and more ingrained where maybe you're using a design agency. Probably a lot of you are using a design agency at some point. And then you kind of like some of that, so you hire a few designers, those creative types that sit over there and, put Post-it notes on their walls. And, but maybe that becomes the internal agency. Product manager needs something, they run over to the designer and say, hey, I need this portal, can you mock it up? I want it to do this, that, and the other thing, and they give you a couple concepts and say, that's the one I want. That's progress, but that's not the end goal. Embedded design, this is where magic starts happening, is when your designers, your product managers, and your engineers are working together as one from the beginning. Because those three lenses can actually create magic. And when everybody's bought into the idea and everybody's bought into the problem that they're trying to solve, you will get better outcomes, I promise you, than just stand alone as a product manager saying, I know the right answer. Everybody else go build it. I promise you, give it a go. Now, infused design, this is like super magic, right? I was talking to this one gentleman, he had the whole organization bought into it. And I said, you got to tell me more, what's the magic here? And he said, John, let me tell you one thing. I kind of listen. He goes, Gunga Gulunga. I'm just kidding. Come on, the Caddyshack reference, right? Okay. But in all seriousness, when everybody, this is where we want to be, when everybody is bought in. If you're a finance person, if you're a marketing person, if you're an operator, you are all designing. You may not think about it, but when you make a decision of changing price, when you make a decision how the bill's presented, when you make a decision of how to answer a call, you're designing. So that's why this notion of embedded design and infused design can make such a big difference. So one of my favorite things to say is design is too important to be left to designers. And it's too important to ignore. So I asked in the beginning how many designers are out there. And now after we listen to this a little bit more, how many would kind of consider yourself a designer? Yeah, that's where the magic happens. So thank you very much. I appreciate your time. And I'm a little late.
Hi.
Yeah.
Thanks for the digital marathon.
See, I tried to tie it into your
You did great.
your endurance thing.
Wow.
Digital endurance.
Yeah, endurance, eating. I'm good with that too. I do lots of eating.
Yeah.
Now, John, I'm actually going to throw you my fun fact question. We're just going to do that. If that's okay.
Okay.
Okay. John also has what was your superpower last year? It was
Gosh, I don't know.
flying, telepathy, something. But, question, and considering we are in Montreal, I feel like this is very appropriate. If you had one cheese that you could eat for the rest of your life, what cheese would it be?
Kosher cheddar.
Kosher cheddar. Why?
I don't know. I was asking somebody the other day, a Jewish friend of mine, I said, what's on the kosher cheddar?
Yeah.
And he explained the whole thing to me, which I really didn't understand, but he clued me in a lot more. But I have no idea why. But when I go to Whole Foods and they got the kosher cheddar slices, magical. Love it.
I'm going to be trying the kosher cheddar now.
And that
Thank you for
was
the
not an
recommendation.
exciting answer, by the way.
But you know what? I'm going to try it. Everyone should now go and try the kosher cheddar. But with that, let's thank John.
Thank you.
Yeah. We are going to have a quick coffee break. So please stretch your legs, go to the restroom, grab a coffee, and we'll see you back here really soon.
Yeah, she wanna shop with Jay.